Hello and welcome back to Manibil. This is my resume of part 2 of my deconstruction of David Hume's book, A Treatise of Human Nature. And I'm not as strictly clear on my understanding or feel as safe in my understanding as I was in the after the first part, but this is sort of how I sort of condense what I've learned from Hume's writing. And he is concerned with space and time, and space slash time, sort of, they are closely related in his thinking. That wouldn't be the case in my thinking, not that close related at least, right? Then he talks about the infinity and divisibility of space and time. And then he goes on further down the line to talk about existence and existent or external world. And these are, of course, important aspects. I would say that it might be a good idea to have a clarification of what you mean by space and time. So they are not just floating somewhere. People are talking about space and time, but there's nothing about it in your philosophy, and that might come up as some kind of shortcoming of your thinking. But I don't personally think that space and time is that important to the philosophy, other than having an idea of what you mean by it, right? Just to make sure that you understand that there is some aspects of your mind that deals with these kinds of things, right? Space is a scaffolding, in my opinion, on which your experience is placed, to some extent at least, right? Mainly colors. Time is a mental distance between memories. And it's also used to get an idea of mental distance between events in the future. So you judge whether or not it's smart to take the apple from the tree next to you, or the apple, same kind of apple, presumably from a tree that is 1,000 yards away from you, right? If there's no other measure on which to base that, right? So it's quicker to get that apple, meaning there's something you are getting rid of in your planning that you otherwise wouldn't help you get there, right? And he talks a lot about infinity and divisibility of these aspects. And to cut it short, so he says sort of something like that space and times are both impressions and ideas. I would disagree with the first part, and basically also the second part, right? But at least the first part, they are not impressions. Time and space are not impressed. They are more like expressed, you could say, right? An idea of space, I don't think you can have an impression of time. You can only have an idea of time. In this particular case, because space is already a default idea placed there by your mind in order to place your impressions. So it's a default idea and nothing else, right? But the ideas that he's referring to are those ideas that are based on impressions, because you cannot have an idea without an impression. In my opinion, the exception is space. You can discuss whether or not time is an idea. I would like to say it's not even an idea, because I don't have any direct notion of time. It's more abstract than space, in my opinion. You might want to discuss that, right? But he says that they are both impressions and ideas, and they are finitely divisible. I don't care too much about this at this point. I might change my mind if Hume enlightens me, right? After all, he's an enlightenment of philosopher, right? But infinity and infinitesimality are sort of paradoxical in the classical atomist opinion of philosophy, or this appeal to a paradox, right? That he talks about that, well, basically geometry is based on something that doesn't exist. A point cannot have any extension. And if it doesn't have any extension, it cannot either be infinitesimal or infinite, right? It's non-existent. So the whole idea of points and lines and geometry, it's basically abstractions. They are artificial constructs that are beneficial, that can be used to, make sort of measurements and predictions and constructions. They aid in that project, but they are not a part of that experience, right? So when they bring in infinity and infinitesimality, they are creating a paradox in the classical sense that either if you split something up and it's still something and you have infinitely many divisions, it must be infinitely large. Infinite many of X is an infinitely large subject, right? Or object, I should say. If division ends in some kind of weird manner as nothing, then it ends up be an infinite number of nothing. But it can't if it's something that you can divide, right? If it's not a point, it has some extension. So it ends up in this reductio ad absurdum, where you sort of go to the extremities and see it creates a paradox. So it doesn't work. It's based on a paradox, paradoxical thinking. Now, it might be that you could talk about infinity and infinitesimality in ideas of numbers and in calculus and so on, but these are merely thought experiment. These are abstract kinds of thinking that has no direct relation. They are not derived from experience. They are actually come up with by your mind and then placed on top of reality, right? This is sort of my interpretation. I don't think he says it's like that, but that would be my interpretation, right? And my stance on mathematics. When it comes to existence, he says that existence is a synonym for idea. He doesn't phrase it that, but to cut it short and condense it into a simple statement, an existence is just a synonym for an idea. He mixes up the terms idea and objects, and I'm not quite sure how he does that, because then object might just be another synonym for existence, which is a synonym for idea. So it's not particularly clear about these objects he mentions a few times, right? But I would say that object is the same of saying existence, and it's a synonym for idea. So basically these words are just rephrasings, potential rephrasings of idea. It's the same thing that's referred to, but it comes with a baggage of understanding existence, right? It has a lot more baggage of bringing along the term idea, which is more neutral, right? So it's also an appeal to philosophers not doing this little trick of taking one word, then changing the word to another word that comes with some baggage and preordained meaning, right? And therefore, okay, now I use the word existence. I guess there's existence then, right? This kind of fallacious argumentation. I think he's trying to point to that, but that might be my overinterpretation, right? And existence is synonym for idea, giving a meaning to idea that is not there by philosophical reasoning. Yeah, just changing the terms, where the terms bring along some prejudice of understanding, and therefore that understanding is all of a sudden there, right? Be careful, look out for that. That's a trick that is often used. It's in most people's minds, words have an incredible power over them, right? Words have incredible power, and the meaning of those words, when it's the difference between a freedom fighter and a terrorist, right? Well, maybe it's a bad example, but it's a freedom fighter. Well, then that's positive, and fist in the air and revolution or whatever, right? Or it's a terrorist. Somebody wants to grab the gun and take over power and submit. Words have a lot of power over people, and don't let the power of words lure you into some kind of understanding of philosophical understanding that isn't there. But by using the words, those sophists who does that bring along a meaning that you are implanting by yourself by the mere fact of them using that term, right? They're screwing with your mind, right? They're bringing shit along, sort of luring you into bringing along yourself because of the understanding of the term, right? Changing from idea to existence. All of a sudden, all of new things arrive out of nowhere, right? It's not argued, it's just a change of terms, right? Okay, then about existent or external world. He says something like, it cannot be other than imagination. Abstractions, which is abstraction from simple or abstract ideas. Not abstract, simple or complex idea. That's a typo for me here. It should be simple or complex ideas, not abstract ideas. But abstractions from simple or complex ideas. You can take some ideas like when Bernardo Kastrup says, well, it's like an ocean with ripples on it, sort of, right? So he's just taking an idea on abstraction and saying, I think that's what is out there beyond my experiences, right? That's not valid. That's bad argument. He's just coming up, choosing whatever he wants, right? To make sense of that which he cannot make sense of. So, since all that there is access to is impressions, there's this garbled text here, right? Since all there are access to is impressions and ideas, as argued in earlier part of his, right? I screwed up this last sentence here. But you cannot make a dichotomy that says impressions and ideas and then come up with some third thing called existence, right? Out of nowhere, without connecting it to that reduction base or that starting base, right? Called impressions and ideas, right? And he basically said there are nothing but your impressions and ideas at that foundation. There might be something you derive from these aspects, but they're all based in these aspects. So you can't just bring in some new stuff and say, no, I'm bringing in some new shit because I need to. You can't do that. That's bad philosophy, right? And if you're saying there is an existent external world, it cannot be other than imagination because that's all you have. An idea of an external world is an imagination. If it's not an idea based on an experience, well, it can't be, or an impression, because impressions is a part of your system. Then you're inside, if in the internal world, right? So what is it about an internal world that makes you say external world? Clarify that, but it seems like this is a recurring problem. I think he stays put on the safe side of saying, yeah, there might be an external world, but I can't get to it. And I would think this is the bit where Immanuel Kant sort of, had his Copernican, revolution in his head, right? Where he realized, well, I have access to my experiences. If there is an external world, and I can somehow fabulate about that, I can never get to what it is, right? There might be something where Kant goes into transcendental this and that and the other. I'm not into that, right? Because he apparently needs to. So there's a weakness in Kant, in my opinion. But stay put on the right side of things, because what you have access to is your experiences, as I call it, right? You would maybe say impressions and ideas, and what is derived from these impressions and ideas, and sort of connections between a relation and comparisons and all these things he's talking about. But without these impressions and ideas, there would be nothing of the other things, right? Okay, so this is sort of my condensation of his part 2, and I hope you enjoy it. Please share, like, and subscribe. Consider a donation, give me a comment, and otherwise, see you in the next one.